We are back on a marvelous Monday here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, with the one, the only, the marvelous one, Dan Marver. Of course, our co-hosts, Devin Tingle and Paul Schvarber. You can check them out every Sunday on the Sports Cubicle. But here on Monday, we get to talk to our friend, the man, the myth, the legend, the coach, the scouts, the marvelous one, Dan Marver. Marver, how are you, buddy? How was your weekend?
Everything's great. It's a good thing there's only one of me. If the world could take two of me, the one and only. But we're talking right now, we're seeing the Big Ten teams drop off, and there's one by one. And on Sunday, every single game is a Big Ten or Midwest team except for one. So it should be interesting to see what happens because we haven't. By the time you hear this, you'll know what happened. But it'll be interesting to see how many Big Ten or Midwest teams are left by the end of the day.
Absolutely. And that is why I'm so happy that we're getting the chance to do this marvelous Monday here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch, because there's just so much things to talk about as we put the show together a little bit behind the veil. When we put the show together Monday through Saturday for the Sunday airing, we do a lot of stuff that goes digital because it's just so hard to make things evergreen in the world of sports. And having this show is able to kind of talk about a lot of these things, including the fact that we saw Loyola in the first round with the first-year coach of Drew Valentine fall to Ohio State 54-41. The offense didn't travel with them. It hadn't really been with them all season. But Loyola making the tournament after losing Porter Moser to a bigger school in Oklahoma. But then you look at what's going on over here in the chance to get to the Sweet 16. The University of Illinois, the Fighting Illini, fall to the Houston Cougars 68-53. They weren't making shots. They weren't making shots in the first round. And it was another disappointing season for U of I. Marver, your thoughts quickly, as you know, we know that it's hard to judge these 18 to 21-year-olds. We know it's hard to talk about things in a tournament, a one-game elimination, but your thoughts as you saw the local teams, not including Notre Dame, who still has a chance of this recording to make a little bit of a run to the Sweet 16. Your thoughts of the local schools in the men's tournament?
It's funny because for sure Michigan's in the Sweet 16, and there's some question whether they should even be in the tournament, with their naughty head coach and all. Who wouldn't shake hands with Wisconsin. But in any event, Illinois has not made the Sweet 16 since 2005. The year that they went to the championship game against North Carolina, by the way. And so it's disappointing. Not as disappointing as last year in a way, because they were a 1 seed and they lost to Loyola. Here they were, 4 seed and lost to a quality team. So it's hard to really, complain too much. They were a 4 and Houston was a 5, but Houston, it was a strong team at 30-5. I mean, for God's sake. So it's not shocking that they lost. It's just that they don't seem to have what it takes to get past the second round now. Believe it or not, we were just talking in the Big Ten. They had 9 teams, in the tournament, and Michigan's guaranteed a Sweet 16 as of this conversation. And right now, Rutgers and Indiana dropped in the play-in, and of course Iowa shockingly got upset. Now, I was saying that the team that I liked is actually Purdue out of the Big Ten, so we'll see what happens with them. And in turn, Gonzaga I like, and I have a sentimental favorite in Duke. But in terms of the Midwest teams, Notre Dame is playing Texas Tech as we talk this evening on Sunday, and that will be a very tough game for them. And it's kind of interesting too. Ohio State's playing Villanova this afternoon on Sunday, and should Ohio State win, guess who they play next? Michigan. So then we'd be guaranteed an Elite Eight out of the Big Ten. So that would be kind of interesting to have the old Michigan-Ohio State rivalry take place in basketball. So you guys that are listening will know about some of these results, but I'm just looking at the bracket. It's interesting because people get confused because now where they play in the first round has absolutely nothing to do with where they play in the Sweet 16. People think that, let's see, Ohio State is playing Villanova now, so they must be playing Houston next. Not true. It's all scattered. They try to keep the higher seeds near home in the first round. And now, Duke's actually going to be playing San Francisco should they win today. Kay wanted to be in Chicago, but that didn't work out. So in any event, that's the way it's working with the tournament. We're in a little bit of a flux here because we don't know all that happened on Sunday, but a lot of Big Ten teams, like I said, you got Notre Dame, you got Michigan State, you got Wisconsin, you got Purdue, Ohio State all playing today. 2. Arizona, TCU, and Miami Auburn are the only non-Midwest games this year. So, I mean, this day,
I'm around. Yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, I've had a long day. This
Yeah.
is,
Well, let me ask you, speaking of a long day and what has now been 2 long tournaments, Brad Underwood, what do you think? I mean, I guess we don't want to speculate. This is a university that has made the tournament, has had high expectations, but again, it's tough to win in March. But your thoughts of what are they going to do? I mean, is this the guy that's going to get them to the promised land, or after just a few already examples that we've seen, he may not be the guy, even though he's really legitimized the program?
Well, it's funny because I thought that Bruce Weber did a fairly decent job, even though after 05 they never got to the Sweet 16, but they never had, a terrible season. And it will be interesting to see how the team rebuilds a little bit too, because they may be losing some, major pieces of the team now after the season. And it should be interesting. It seems like the way to succeed now is transfers, more so than the high school players, particularly when they didn't have to sit out a year. If that rule goes back in where the transfer has to sit out a year, then that changes the whole picture. But a lot of the players have gotten some legitimate and some what I would call questionable exemptions to play right away, because they wanted to be near their sick grandpa or something, So, I mean, I don't know how that's going to work out. So Illinois, I think they've had 2 of what look like pretty good years. And now if Kofi's gone, and Frazier's obviously gone, so we'll see what happens with their personnel. So that's going to be the key. A lot of times the coach gets the blame, obviously, and I don't see them making a change right now. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but I mean, they've had a couple good years there, except for the postseason. They were the champs of the conference during the regular season, so you can't knock that too much.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing for the University of Illinois, the Fighting Illini basketball team, is this is a university, a program that people look high on. This is a program that does have some prestige. The problem is, and it's the same thing we talk about in the NBA, they don't have a national championship in this sport. It changes your entire the view in which we view you, the spectrum in which we view you when your program has won. And the U of I has had some amazing teams make the Final Four, the Sweet 16, the national championship game. You think about Dee Brown, Darren Williams, Luther Head, Roger Paul. You think about how good some of these teams were that made it to that run. Now, I think this is going to take a person who knows how to work the transfer portal. We have to, I think it's great that players have as much power as they do when you're looking at how coaches can go whatever they want. I mean, Shaka leaves Texas and goes up to Marquette and does either program, isn't it better for it? And how many millions of dollars does he take it from the taxpayers, the university? So like when you start doing this whole thing, it's going to take an entire corporation to win a national championship. That's why it's impressive when you see institutes like Duke be able to do it, because you have a CEO in Coach K that's going to be able to do the entire thing, whether you're doing it on the board or without it. You know that he's in charge. And that's a huge thing. And that's what U of I needs to find out. This is a university that does have some prestige, but doesn't have championship prestige. And it's hard to win in March, but we know here that there could be greatness in this university. And there should be greatness amongst the entire Chicagoland in the state of Illinois when it comes to basketball recruitment. And that's something that you've been talking about for years with Jerry. That's something that our up and coming generation of sports journalists are talking about. Why can't the melting pot of great basketball players in this state stay local? Why is it? Maybe now with the NIL, maybe now with transfer portals, you're able to get people to come home. Maybe Northwestern, UIC, Northern Illinois, Loyola, DePaul. Maybe U of I could do something. Illinois State, Bradley. There's plenty of universities that can have room for the great talent in this state. And Barbara, you watch a lot of it when it comes to boys and girls basketball. So that's all we can hope for here. And it's something, we're going to go ahead and we'll keep you updated as the weeks go on, as we get ready for the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, and the Final Four, and eventual national championship. But I just wanted to get Marvelous' thought as the 2 local schools are bounced, and we will see what Notre Dame does moving forward and what the rest of the Big Ten does. But Marver, something did happen. We do have news, something to celebrate if you're a Cubs fan or a Sox fan. Joe Kelly coming to the South Side, a veteran arm who's going to deal with some injuries, going to come back, but again, a professional who's won World Series games, who's been in tons of playoffs games, who's been in crazy markets, and Seiya Suzuki, this phenom that the Cubs were the head bidder for, And they have a right-handed 27-year-old power hitter from Japan that has a beautiful swing, and they give him a no-trade clause, a reasonable contract in today's day and age, and so much other news. We see Chris Bryant is going to Colorado. We see Kyle Schwarber is going to Philadelphia. We see Rizzo is heading back to the Yankees. Javi has signed with Detroit earlier on. Carlos Correa now going to Minnesota. In general, let's start locally. Your thoughts on some of the moves that happen in the north and south side of Chicago. Then we'll move around the league.
Yeah, when you're talking about Joe Kelly, I mean, with Liam and Kimbrel, I mean, if it seemed like they're pretty well set in the bullpen for closers. I mean, they may be a little overloaded for closers now, but of course they did lose Rodon out of the starting lineup, so a starting rotation. But they've made, the Cubs actually made a whole bunch of moves. They got the Suzuki, of course, and they seem to be loading up on some pitching. And they got a shortstop and and whatnot. But like you say, some of our favorites didn't come back with that. Some of the Cub diehards thought that maybe we get a Schwarber or whatever back, and Rizzo's going to be in New York, but he may not be able to play in home games.
Yeah,
much like the situation with the Knicks. So I don't Nets. I'm sorry. So Kyrie Irving. So we're going to see what happens. But as it goes right now, it's crazy. I mean, basically in a week's time, there are like dozens of free agents that had to make moves, and they made them quickly. I mean, even Freeman with the Dodgers, it was a biggie. So the Cubs and the Sox, the Sox have the arrow pointing upwards, and the Cubs generally have the arrow pointing downwards. So it will be interesting to see. I mean, I haven't heard too much about all the guys the Cubs got, Crow Armstrong and some of the others in all those trades on July 31st. So that will be interesting to see as well. But on the Sox, they just need to. They got a second baseman now. They're in pretty good shape, Harrison. So I think their lineup is solid, pitching is solid. So they didn't need too many additions. I mean, they seem to have almost too many bullpen people. But I guess it's good to have too many rather than too few.
Let me ask you this. This is something that I've talked with Devin and Paul on the Sports Cubicle and here on Sports from the Couch. Thank you for tuning in to this marvelous Monday. It's Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado. Don't forget, you can also join our co-hosts Devin Tingle and Paul Shawari every Sunday night on WCPT 820 AM. And Marver, I was thinking about this. You're looking at this Cubs team and some of the moves they've made. And you think of Marcus Stroman and Sia Suzuki more specifically because they are long-term enough. They did spend enough money. There is some no trade clause. And then you look at what's going on with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. So I'm wondering, do you think the Cubs, maybe while retooling / rebuilding last year and this year, they see themselves much more closer to whatever the quote unquote pull the trigger on it is? Maybe it's if you're hanging around because of the extended playoffs, you're hanging around, you're 500, you get to midsummer and you're like, hey, you know what? We're in this dang thing. Do you think that's where Jed Hoyer is kind of keeping his mindset on? And with the thought of the Ricketts maybe being in this ownership group for Chelsea FC, that optics say we can't be cheap on one thing and then spend $4 billion in the same sentence, in the same press junket you're going to give somebody. So what are your thoughts kind of long-term for the Cubs? What do you think they're planning? What mind games are they doing right now?
Now it seems like when it gets to the trade deadline, whatever that's going to be, it's going to be a little bit different because now it turns out that with the 6 teams now, instead of 5 making the playoffs, so there'll be more buyers than sellers probably because there'll be some more teams that think, hey, I think I got a chance. So that there should be a lot of movement, and it would be nice to think the Cubs will be in that equation. But you look at the division. I mean, Cincinnati lost Castellanos. He went to Philadelphia as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And so they might not be as strong as they've been. The Brewers seem pretty good, particularly with their unstoppable closer. But it seems like Pittsburgh is not that great. So the Cubs might be able to sneak up the division a little bit. St. Louis and Milwaukee will be the main competition, I believe. So if they can, get a good combination here of things going. I mean, obviously they had injuries too, Bote, Happ, and they're down a starting pitcher too. So it will be interesting to see how the rotation comes out because they did add some arms, but I'm not sure that they're going to be much better than 500 team personally. So I think it would be a challenge and 500 might make the playoffs now. Who knows? But in terms of the Sox, I think that they'll be able to win that division. I mean, Cleveland, the new Guardians, seem to be the main competition. Detroit is retooling a little bit. Minnesota's been down. Kansas City's way down. So it could be argued that the Cubs and the Sox are in divisions that are winnable because they're both not. Neither one of them is the strongest division in the league.
And what have we learned over the last few years, and more specifically, what happened with Atlanta? If you're in it and you make some moves, all you got to do is get into the tournament and win a few games. And who knows in today's day and age what happens?
Right.
So, an injury here, a sickness there, and next thing you know, you're in the World Series. Marver, your final thoughts on
you look, Mr. MVP of the Braves, Soler is now with Miami.
Yeah.
So it's talk about the college basketball. It seems like the Wild West and free agency for MLB now this week. So we'll see.
Let us know your thoughts, friends. Marvelous was trying to make sense of this craziness, and so are we, but we want to know your thoughts. Let us know, what did you think about the Cubs and White Sox recent moves and some of the big free agents that have found new homes in Major League Baseball? We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. Now, before we get out of here on this marvelous Monday here on Sports from the Couch and on the Sports Cubicle with Dan Marver and Mike Mercado and our friends Stephen Teagle, Paul Shivari, every Sunday on WCPT 820 AM and right here on Mercado Airwaves Network, the Chicago Bulls will be taking on the Toronto Raptors on Monday night, and they will be getting back Patrick Williams already. Alex Caruso is back. Some bad news on Lonzo Ball. It seems like his rehab has stalled. To let you know how big of a game this is for the Chicago Bulls, you know that the Eastern Conference has been just such a crazy tight-knit thing, but the Bulls have struggled the last 10, 2-8, and currently in 5th place. And we all know you need to avoid that 7, 8, 9, and 10 region to make sure you're not playing in the play-in. Well, Toronto is in the 7th spot at 39-31. The Bulls at 41-29. So this is a big game for the Bulls to try to make sure they have some space between them and Toronto. Marvelous. You hear that Williams is coming back. Caruso is back. This team has struggled. They seem to have just slowed down. Zach LaVine is dealing with a bad knee, and we don't know what's going on with Lonzo. I talked about this with Jonathan Hood just last week. Expectations changing. Where should they be at this point? You're seeing what's happening, what's happened over the last 10. Your thoughts of the Bulls trying to get healthy these last 12 games of the season. Marvelous.
We were getting worried last week about the fact that they might not even have a home court advantage. Now they're behind Boston, the 5th spot. Cleveland is right behind them, but I'm not too worried about finishing 11th right now. I mean, they're actually as close to 10th as they are to 1st right now, unfortunately, which is Atlanta. So God forbid they get to number 10 spot, but they're like 10 games ahead of completely falling out of the playoffs right now. So I don't think that's going to happen. They're not going to get passed by Washington, in my opinion. But it looks like they still will make the playoffs like we always hoped, but they may not get a first-round home advantage, and they may, God forbid, end up in that new play-in tournament if they get to that, fall as far as 7, and they're not that far away, unfortunately. So, I mean, they need to get healthy. It looks like Ball isn't coming back anytime soon. Caruso's back, and they've got some other issues. They've got the rehab player over at the Windy City Bulls. I think that Williams is going to be back, but it looks like they've taken a little bit of a fall here. This trip on the West Coast was unsuccessful as we thought it might be, but now they're having trouble even with some of the marginal teams. Like Detroit, at first they were losing to all the teams that had a better record than them, and now they're struggling, it seems, against everybody. And I'm just worried about their position for the playoffs, which is not that far away, honestly. But what's going to happen is we're going to just have to ride the wave and see if they can possibly get an uptick when they get everybody back, hopefully before April.
Marvelous. I think the thing that's really scary too is they still got to play Milwaukee. So I know we could dwell on this, but really we just don't know anything until really halfway through next week into the next edition of the Sports Cubicle and then a Marvelous Monday, because it's just so close in the standings. And I agree with you. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs, but the hope of a first round home court, I think that's kind of out the window. And I think, poor DeMar, what a great first half, but since the second half, he's out of that MVP race. So now you're just trying to get to the finish line and just hoping to get to the playoffs and just hoping somehow you get lucky and maybe go against a slumping Boston team, which doesn't seem to exist. Maybe you get Atlanta or somebody bad like that. But I think with the Bulls right now, it all just comes down to, bad place, bad timing, and hopefully you just get lucky enough. But Marvelous, it's been a fun, marvelous Monday. Any final thoughts as we get ready to kick off this week? It was a busy weekend. It's going to be a busy Sweet 16 and Elite 8. We'll have an idea of the national championship and the Final Four. Baseball will be kicking off in just a few days. We got spring training, Marvelous. How amazing is that? And the NFL never sleeps, just refuses to go to bed. We'll talk about the Sean Watson and all that. We'll have somebody on the show that we can discuss that very delicate matter, what it means for the future of the NFL. And of course, we got to make some fun about Pittsburgh and Mitch Trubisky, because watch he become the second coming of Terry Bradshaw. Marvelous. Any final thoughts on this Marvelous Monday?
We were talking about Trubisky. That is kind of amusing. He's with Pittsburgh, and he's going to be fitting into a tremendous team, but it would be amazing if he was able to be successful there. I mean, you look at Stafford. Look what happened with him when he went to a good team. You never know. But we were talking about Brady too. I guess we were wrong. I was wrong. He's not going to stay home with Giselle. It looks like he's going to play. And it's like I thought Giselle might be able to convince him, but I guess she has about as much input as Melania had with Donald. So, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, baseball. I was watching some of the games on Marquee, and it's great to see baseball back. And we got all the different sports going on, so it's going to be an exciting week.
It's always an exciting time to talk sports with our coach, the scout, the man, the myth, the legend, the marvelous one, Dan Marver. He is 1/4 of the Sports Cubicle, along with Devin Tingle, Paul Shivari, and myself, Mike Mercado, every Sunday nights on WCPT 820 AM and throughout the entire week here on Mercado Airwaves Network, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and of course on the SoundCloud of WCPT 820 AM. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this edition of a marvelous Monday here on the Sports Cubicle for the one, the only, the marvelous one, Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado. We'll see you next time.